Jasmine Crockett, as part of the negotiations over what will be cut in the DOGE bill going on right now, made the most ridiculous argument of the entire negotiating process. We have a video of it. She said that we need Sesame Street to go spread democracy in the world, in Iran and Iraq and the Middle East and North Korea. Take a look.
When you start to talk about whether or not Sesame Street or anything else that's on NPR or PBS ends up in other places, this is so that there is not this warped thought process about the Western world or about the United States. We're talking about making sure that we don't end up allowing people to be radicalized against us because they have a terrible vision of us, because they may be in a government that actually puts out bad, terrible propaganda about us.
Okay, so first off, when did Jasmine Crockett, of all people, start to love Western ideals and want America to spread? She hates American ideals. She's made that very clear her entire campaign, her entire career. Second off, I think we can all agree that there are better ways to do that, if you care about that, than having Sesame Street play in North Korea. So with that, here is everything included in this bill, because not a lot of people are talking about it. The bill right now, it passed the House on the 12th, and the first wave of negotiation passed with a tie-breaking vote from J.D. Vance in the Senate today. Now, they're going to go to one more vote to make it official, and then they're going to go back to the House for their final negotiations, and I think it's highly likely that it will pass. The only senators who didn't vote in favor of this, of course, were Collins, Murkowski, and McConnell. Now, first off, Mitch McConnell, we'll break each one down. Mitch McConnell is an idiot for not voting yes on this, I think completely. I think he needs to be replaced, and he will. But as I've talked about in the past, it's actually not the worst thing that Collins didn't vote for this. I know a lot of people call her a rhino, but you have to realize that she is in a purple state at best, if anything, a little bit more on the blue side. And I know Republicans want to talk about primarying her and putting a more MAGA candidate in there, but you have to understand a MAGA candidate would not win in Maine. They just wouldn't, not at this stage. And so the question is, would you rather have a rhino or a Democrat as a senator in Maine? And for me, I'd rather have a rhino because at least she's going to vote correctly most of the time. For instance, if there's another Supreme Court justice and they need to be confirmed, most likely Collins is going to go along with the rest of Republicans. If you have a Democrat, that would not happen. So again, rhino, much better than a Democrat. Her not voting for this does not change the outcome of the bill, so I'm not really mad about it. In any case, they didn't need her vote to pass. This is what is actually in the bill. The total amount rescinded is at about $9.4 billion of abuse, fraud, and PBS and NPR. $1.1 billion of that is the NPR PBS stuff. That's how much we are essentially giving to those two stations and their affiliates. And then the rest mostly comes from USAID, which is fantastic. Breaking that down a little bit further, again, about $1.1 billion comes from PBS and NPR. This would effectively eliminate all funding to them, which is fantastic. The rest is from USAID, $2.5 billion from development assistance, $1.6 from economic support fund, which, by the way, this is all gobbledygook. This could go to anybody. This is the funding Guatemalan trans education. A little bit later in it, it actually talks about specific, you can see there's transition initiatives, democracy fund, USAID operating expenses. So the most random thing, and by the way, those operating expenses are $125 million. So this is a lot of money. And you've got international disaster assistance, migration and refugee assistance, things that can be done in the private sector or really shouldn't be done in the dark when you actually go through it and see what's actually being done. Again, when you say there's this one democracy fund, right? You hear that and you think, well, that's actually pretty good. We want democracy abroad. But then you find out that it's funding transitioning surgeries in Guatemala or in Cambodia. You realize, oh yeah, that's just a thing that people say in order to get whatever they want funded. That's what's being cut in this bill. Now, for those of you who are civic scholars, you'll remember that only the reconciliation package can usually pass with only 50 votes. That's what the big, beautiful bill was. That's why they tend to get so big, is because people are trying to really push everything in there because it only needs a majority rather than 60. All the other bills can be filibustered, and so you need at least 60 votes in the Senate to break that. The reason why this was able to pass with only 50 is due to something called the rescission process. And this is just according to Wikipedia on the rescission process. It says it uses the expedited presidential rescission provision under the Congressional Budget and Impoundment Control Act of 1974, so it bypasses the Senate filibuster and only requires 51 votes to pass. In other words, there are some times where you can cut spending, but not add spending with only 50 votes. And I think this was very well used by Republicans in this instant. Now, this is not just a fiscal win. Obviously, the $9.4 billion being cut is good. It's not a massive amount of money, but it's still a good thing. I think more than the fiscal win, this is a cultural win and a social policy win. What's far better than the $9 billion is the fact that we are no longer subsidizing NPR, which is a radical leftist organization now. I know a lot of people grew up listening to NPR. I did. And back then, maybe in the early 2000s, it was mostly kind of in the middle. Now they run stories about trans men and women in a pro light, and they're overtly partisan. It is very clear. Go open NPR. A lot of people don't watch NPR anymore, which is a good thing because they're not good. But go to NPR's website and just look at their top 10 stories. You will see insane bias in there. They are not unbiased like they claim. PBS is really not much better. We've all seen what they're doing with Sesame Street. They've had some very scary LGBTQ stuff in there, which I've talked about in the past. And I think it is perfectly fine. Again, this is not a censorship issue. This is not a free speech issue. It's perfectly fine for these people to exist on their own. If PBS and NPR want to do these things, that is their prerogative. And we can all call them out and say they're stupid, but that doesn't mean that we should censor them. This is not censoring them. This is us saying that we should not pay for it anymore and that they shouldn't masquerade as an objective outlet. That's all it's saying. Now, apart from the PBS and the NPR stuff, we also have USAID. And on the social policy side, this is a huge win as well, because cutting USAID is a monumental win for DOGE, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and the Republicans. It was a completely corrupt organization. It was funding who knows what in a lot of cases. And then, of course, there's a lot of evidence that it was actually being siphoned back to progressive and Democrat groups in the United States, which is horrible and very corrupt. So again, cutting their funding is a massive turning point in trying to root out corruption and fraud, which was ultimately DOGE's whole objective in the first place. Growing your business can be satisfying, but it's also very difficult. Sales assistants, marketing specialists, accountants, they're all essential for scaling your business, but it can be incredibly expensive at times, especially when you're in the small and medium phases of your business, and the quality of talent sometimes can be rough. And that's why I partnered with Leverage Assistant. Leverage Assistant connects American businesses like yours with the accountants, the data analysts, marketing specialists, sales assistants, you name it, working in the exact same time zones of your business for a fraction of the cost. The average company right now is saving more than $20,000 a year in labor costs thanks to Leverage Assistant. They're not a recruiter. They're not a marketplace. Leverage Assistant is a high-touch resourcing solution where they are vetting every assistant through over 12 hours of interviews, skill tests, reference checks, and behavioral assessments to ensure that the right cultural and operational fit for your business. And right now, they're being incredibly generous with just you guys, my viewers. They're giving 1 month free so that you can check out how high quality talent they are without any risk to you. So to go check that out and to get that 1 month free, head to the link in the description below. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please like the video so other great patriots like yourselves will see it. And you can tune in every single weekday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show, or you can watch another video right here.